What's happening? And welcome back today on the podcast, The Power of Moving Forward. Now, we're going to look at the opposite of that, the past, backwards, reverse. We're going to look at what keeps people from moving forward in their life, what keeps people to basically continue to do things that pretty much hurt them, what keeps people from actually discovering the purpose for their lives. We're going to talk about that today, and obviously we're going to use the word of God, and we're also going to just look at definitions, because once we know what these definitions are and we understand the definitions and we implement this power of moving forward, we'll be able to do things that we never thought we could. All right, now cue the intro.
Life is precious, and we all have the opportunity of living it to the fullest. Unfortunately, so few of us know how to manage it all. How do we account for our opportunities? How do we account for our time? How do we account for our relationships, health, spirituality, homes, finances, influence, and careers? How do we account for the one life we have to live? I am so glad you asked. In this program, you will find answers to all of these questions and more. Welcome to the Account for Your Life podcast with your host, the healthy accountant himself, Jay Moore.
All right, man. Welcome back, man. Just super excited to be here. And if you've watched the last couple of podcasts, you saw the lost purpose of money. You also saw the fastest path to multiplying your money. So all of this is kind of in the same vein. We're just not talking directly about money, but we're going to talk about things that affect your money. So one of the things that I discovered, some in the recent years, months, weeks, whatever it is, what I discovered is that many of us learn things. Many of us learn things. Think about this. If you're like me, I'm 52 years old, be 53 this year, be married 25 years in September, 25th anniversary. A lot of times we are operating from the past. What do you mean? Okay. Think about the things that you've learned. A lot of things that you've learned are in the past. So if I've learned something in the past, how is the past affecting my future? How's the past, not even the future, how is it affecting the present, the power to move forward? And I looked in the past and I said to myself, I said, well, I discovered the lost purpose of money. Right? They didn't tell us, like you didn't learn that you should be multiplying. I also discovered that the fastest path to multiply is to deposit in, so that if you don't have money, a lot of times we trying to go and learn, and just do all the investing stuff. Oh, you better put the investing in you. Then as I looked at that, I says, what would be the thing? What would be the thing that would stop me, that literally would stop me from multiplying and then discovering that purpose? This power to move forward. This power to move forward. Now, you have the ability to move forward, because you already know, if you go in your past, you can see that you moved forward. You went straight through elementary school. You went straight through high school, hopefully. And for some of us, you went to college. You may not have gone straight through like me. It wound up taking me, it took me, 6 years? 6 years from the time I graduated from high school. Now, I wasn't in school the whole time, but it took me 6 years from the time I graduated high school. So 6 years, but I got through. Why? I moved forward, even when I slowed down. I slowed down at one point. I wasn't in school, but I quickly got back on track. How did that happen? All right. Now, before I share with you definitions and words and things that you can use to start implementing, I want to look at what the Word of God says about some of this stuff. Now, because if we're going to move forward, we're going to need to understand, like for me, the Word of God is everything. So let's see what He says in Isaiah 43:18. Remember not the former things. So wait a second. He says, don't even think about what you used to, the stuff you used to do. Man, have you ever met up with old friends? Have you ever got with friends and all they want to talk about is the good old days, years ago, and how we used to do this and used to do that? That's one of the most annoying conversations for me. Seriously, because I don't want to talk about it. Man, what's your purpose? How are you living? Like, where are you going? Like, what's multiplying in your life? I don't want to talk about those things. It says, forget the former things, neither consider the things of old. Don't even, it says, don't even consider them. Right now, we have to know that the former things and the old things will literally keep you from moving forward. In verse 19, it says, behold, I will do a new thing. I will do a new thing. Now it shall spring forth. I love how the writer did that. I will do a new thing. Behold, I will do a new thing. And then now it shall spring forth. It's only going to spring forth if we forget the former things, if we don't consider the things of old. If we don't consider things of old. So moving forward, there's some power in that. I moved forward just yesterday. And one of the things that I discovered is that the reason why we don't move forward is we're focusing on things that are things in the past is holding us up. Almost like, man, I messed up before, so dang, man, I messed up. Or things that think, man, I didn't do that stuff, man, I can't believe I didn't do it. I didn't do it. And you focus on the stuff you didn't do, and it's in the past, and all you got to do is say, you know what, if I just do it today. I heard a video from one of my mentors this morning as I was coming out of the gym. Power of just being he says, this is how you can be decisive, is the video. And basically he says, just do it. Just do it. Nike said that first. Just do it. Like, just go to the gym. Just go out for a run. Just lift the weights. Just do the 500 push-ups every single day. Just change your diet. Just say the right things. Just be a kind person. Just do it. Let's not talk about doing it. Let's do it. And yesterday, as I'm coming into this new identity, but it's not a new identity. Imagine this. Imagine if you're probably a believer. So imagine this. If you actually knew what God said about you, or if you actually knew who God said you are, what if you actually knew that? How would you respond? How would you what would you do? Seriously. I want you to think about it. If you actually knew, if you actually knew that you were king, if you actually knew that you were a queen, if you actually knew that you were a ruler, if you actually knew that you were successful at all the things that you actually had thought about, what if you knew all the things in your heart that you want, that you feel like you have the ability to do? What if you knew it was actually true because God told you it was true? I'm not talking about like the times of, well, God told me who I am. And sometimes we speak, they call it Christianese. Sometimes we speak that language and it's just talking points. I hate talking points. That's why sometimes politics gets on my nerves, because they're just talking points. They're not actually saying anything that is real. They're just giving you points that you want to hear, and not points that they're actually going to do. So a talking point is almost like pointless talk. Pointless. It's just dumb. Just like talking about stuff that happened in the past, when we should be talking about things that are right now in the present that we can move forward on. We can get into forward in just a second. We haven't even gotten there yet. So this power to move forward, what's going to keep us from getting there? The past, right? Paul has something to say as well. So Isaiah had something, and then Paul said something. Philippians 3 and 13 and 14. Brethren, do you realize how both of these passages started? The first one said, behold. This one says, brothers, please. I don't count myself have done anything apprehended. I'm just like you. But this one thing I do, forgetting those things which are behind and reaching forth unto those things which are before. So now what he's saying is that he says, look, dude, there's times when the past has gotten me too, man. But you know what? It's when I go forward, things change. change. It's when I look forward, I see something that's worth forgetting the past. And in verse 14, he tells us, I press toward the mark for the prize of the high calling of God in Christ Jesus, because I can see something that's better than what is behind me. See, because Paul knew who he was. See, he was Saul first, and God changed his name. So he knew that he was a murderer. He knew that he took advantage of people. He knew he was wretched. And he knew that there was things in his past that he's just like, yo, that stuff is bad. So no matter how bad you look, I'm probably worse, is what he's saying. But the one thing I do is I realize that I got to focus on moving forward. I press towards the mark for the prize of the high calling of God, not my heart, not me, not my heart high calling, not the things that I'm just like, oh, I just want this stuff. No, he's talking about the purpose for which God has. That's so good that I would want to move forward. I would want to use this power to go forward. So a couple things have to happen in our lives. A couple things have to happen. Yes, we have to one, forget the former things. Yes, we have to forget the past. Yes, we have to not even consider the things of, oh, of course we want to do a new thing and go forth. Of course we want to just press toward the mark. One of the words I looked up, I was in some training yesterday, and the guy was talking about this shift, talking about a shift that people have to make. And I looked up the word shift, right? I looked up the word shift, and the word shift is a slight change in position, direction, or tendency. I love that one. So think about tendencies that we have. And if we're talking about shift, we're not talking about like totally change in directions. We're talking about a shift. A shift could be a change in direction. It says it could be that, but it says slight. There's a book that I read. It was a really good personal development book. It's called The Slight Edge. I can't remember who wrote it. But I read this book back in 2015. It was a gift someone gave me. And I read the book, and it was just like, to be great, to be good, it's just like one, just a little. It's not even a lot. They say a successful person just does 20% more. 20%. It's not like they work so much harder than everybody else. What they do is they say, just a little bit more. Just a little bit more. Just one more, right? You go to the gym and you do a couple more. You go to the gym and you spend a couple more minutes. You go in the gym and you hit it a little bit harder, right? Just a little bit, a slight. So when we're talking about moving forward, we got to come under a new identity. But it's not even new. And remember when we started this, I talked about if you knew who God said you was, if you actually knew it like in your heart of hearts, if you just knew it, what would you do? Like, how would you respond? Like if you actually knew that you were a king. I've got a king's crown out on it's out in my living room. And I got the king's crown when I was at the 100X conference was that 22 or 20? It was 22. It was 23. I got the crown when I was there at the conference, and I put the crown on. Now that crown's not worth anything. That crown is just probably worth a few dollars that they probably spent on them. But what if you actually had a crown that was worth millions of dollars? What if you had this crown that you could put on and represent the kingship that you are, and you knew it? Slight. Would you make that slight? It wouldn't even be a slight adjustment. It would be a full-on turn to move forward. Why? Because you'd be like, wait a second. I'm way more than this that I've been doing. So I don't even have to make a slight change. I now know my identity is full of me. It's full of me. And I know who I am. And then I looked at a couple more words. I looked at, we're going to get to forward in a second. That'll be right at the end. And then you're going to blast off, right? I looked at the past. What is the past? No longer existing. Imagine this. Imagine every day you go into a time warp that does not exist anymore. But yet that's where you hang out. Me, I've hung out there. I've had what's the word? These negative feedback loops where, and I didn't know what it was until I had a coach and he was like, Jay, you're in a negative feedback loop. I'm like, what is that? He says, when you basically keep reliving the past, you keep reliving the same problem over and over and over. And it's gotten to the point where it's speeding up and it feels like you can't get off of the race. It feels like you can't get off of that roller coaster or rat wheel. It's nothing like the rat wheel. And he was just like, Jay, you got to get off of this negative feedback. I'm like, well, how do you do that? I don't know how. And he said something so succinct. He says, but go help somebody. He says, forget about, wanting a client, making money, all that stuff. Nah, forget that. Just go find somebody to maybe pick up some groceries, give somebody else something, help somebody else do something. I was like, you think that'll work? He says, I know it will work. He says, he says, Jay, I've been in sales slumps and it's nothing like being in a slump. And then I would go and do something to help somebody else. And then I would start back doing the thing I was doing. And all of a sudden I'm out of the slump because my whole energy changed. I stopped reliving the problem. I stopped reliving the past and I start focusing on moving forward. There's a power in moving forward. There's something about moving forward that's so different than reliving the past, right? What about moving backwards? What is backwards? A backward is going into the past. Imagine it's like, it's crazy because when I go to the gym, I get on the treadmill and I'll put the treadmill up to the highest it's like 15% incline. And I remember when I would put it only at 6% incline, and it would just be challenging. Now I would put it up at 15% incline. I would walk on it. I walk at 15% incline, just about 2.7 for about 15, 20 minutes, just to get the juices boiling. But then I will put the emergency stop on so that it won't go down, so it'll stay up. And it's still at 15%, and I turn around. And I begin, now the treadmill is not on. I turn it to the emergency stop. So there's no power in, you can get this in a second. There's no power in the treadmill's not moving anymore. So there's no power. So when I turned around and said, I'm going to walk backward, but I'm not going to use the power of the treadmill. I'm going to make it go backward. Now, this is good. This is a good thing for me and for people who might have had like ankle problems and knee problems. What it does is it builds you up. So going backwards in this particular instance is very good. But in life, when we go backward, what happens is we force, like I'm forcing something to happen. In that case, it's good. But in life's case, when we start moving backward, what we're doing is we're forcing our way back into something that doesn't even exist any longer. Can you start? Are you starting to see this? I'm focusing more on the past today, even though we're going to move forward. You got to understand how messed up the past is, and even the stuff that's good in the past, leave it there. Why? Because it's like, I used to talk to a person and they would always bring up the past. I'm always talking about what happened in the past, where, how it was better in the past. And I would be like, oh my goodness, this is too much. I can't take it. We want to get out of those environments because even the good stuff in the past is bad. You cannot go to the past. That's like saying just because I was good in the past, I can't be good in the present. I can't move forward. I take the past and I press forward toward the mark. So What is this forward? What is forward? The direction that one is facing toward the front. Come on now. If I turn and I got my back to you and I start and I'm not talking directly to you, I'm facing the past. Today we're talking about moving forward, and we focus mostly on the past because that's where many of us are. Many of us are reliving the past over and over and over and over. But Jay, it's hard. It's hard until you stop saying it's hard. I was going to make a Facebook post today, and I was like, I couldn't even write the post because I said that wouldn't be a good post. Even though, it would, because it was going to talk about something that it ain't hard. I'm not even going to partner with the fact that something I'm doing is hard. Why? Because I don't want to believe it's hard. I want to believe it is actually pretty simple and pretty easy for me to do things. Because if I know who God said I am, then these things are nothing. It's nothing. It's just what it is. It's like, oh, you can do 500 push-ups a day. That's not hard. You can go to the gym every day. That's not hard. You can make as much money as you want. That's not hard. Like literally just partner with the fact that it's not that it's not work. It ain't going to be hard. It ain't going to be hard. Why? Because if somebody else learned it, then that means I can learn it. So guys, the power of moving forward. What will that do? What will that do for our lives? Yeah, I'm with you. What would that do for our lives? I'm going to tell you what it would do. Our relationships will change. Our families will change. Our businesses will change. Our jobs will change. Our churches will change. Our bodies will change. Our minds will change. Everything will change. Before I let you go, some years ago in 2019, January, when I discovered Dr. Miles Monroe on YouTube, and I started listening to, wouldn't even just listen, I was watching just about every YouTube video that was on there. And I was taking notes, was watching, I was listening, taking notes, watching and listening. And it was like, maybe within about a month and a half, I get a call to go and speak at a church. Like, I'm not a pastor. It hasn't even been, at one point I thought I wanted to do a lot of that. I mean, I do want to do things like that, but not in the sense that, speaking all the time in church and stuff, but it was good. Right. So I go to a church to speak. Someone asked me to speak at a church, and I went and I prepared a message, wrote it, had my notes and stuff. And it was on change. It was on, like, literally, because I was living a new change. I was changing. My identity was shifting. I was moving forward. I was pressing forward. And I gave this message on change. And I talked about how one person can change their world, their church. And when I was done that day, and this was a diverse group of people, when I say diverse, young, old, all age groups. And I could see that people wanted to change, but they were having a problem moving forward because the past had them bound. They wanted to move forward. And I remember the pastor at the time, I ran into him. He was just like, man, the people were calling me. They called me and was like, yo, we got to talk. Like, we got to do this stuff. We got to change. I wonder if there's been any messages like that since at that church. But I realized that when you move forward, you discover things. You discover things you would have never discovered. You see things you would have never saw. You experience things you would have never experienced. You become you become a person that you never thought you could become, but it's only going to happen when you use your ability to move forward. And what is forward? The direction that one is facing toward the front. Today, take your power that God has given you so that you can now face forward and press toward the prize that God said about you and that God has for you. Let that be let today's message, let today's podcast be the beacon call for you to change your life for the rest of your life. Guys, I thank you for joining me for this episode of the Account for Life podcast. My name is Jay Moore, the Healthy Accountant. I help people like you account for their life, account for their business, and make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel and so you can listen and watch more videos just like this. God bless you, and I will see you soon. Peace.
Thanks for joining us, listening friends. We are so glad you invested this time with us. Always remember, you only have one life to live, so live it to the fullest. This has been the Account for Your Life podcast with your host, the healthy accountant himself, Jay Moore. Until next time, make it a great day.